And we're trying to take this message to every one of you. And every place I go, I still look into your eyes, and I see one similar thing. Your faces are different, but your eyes still say the same thing. We just want to be left alone, and we want to raise our family without the federal government trying to tell us something. When I was sheriff in Arizona, I was the first sheriff in American history to file a lawsuit against the Clinton administration or against any administration and tell them that we're not going to participate with their federal gun control scheme known as the Brady Bill. And there were actually 5 Brady Bills scheduled, and our lawsuit killed Brady Bills 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we wouldn't even be here today because they were going to completely destroy the Second Amendment. The push for serializing ammunition, it was in Brady Bill 2. And we killed all that. 2 small-town sheriffs go all the way to the Supreme Court and preserve the Second Amendment because that's what we swore to do. And you know what? I sued the Clintons, and I live to tell about it. If you look at the history of the Clintons and Billy Bob, you know, and all his administration back when he was governor, look at that. I mean, really examine it, and I did. I'm the only person to sue Bill Clinton on a non-sexual matter. Don't get him mad at me, though, okay? I don't want to be on that long list that's on the internet of all the people that disappeared. We don't care, though. They can make all the threats against us. They can do all the exploitation, the browbeating. They can pass all these. Well, you don't pass an executive order. Executive orders are nothing but trash in the first place.
Amen.
Even if they pass another law, it's still trash. If it doesn't coincide with the fundamental supreme law of the land, it means nothing. And so just let me tell them, along with you, I'm not a sheriff anymore, but let me give you this order. Never, under any circumstance, are you to give up your guns or disarm yourself. Ever. As an investigator and as somebody who looks at our Constitution, and I have studied it, and I've studied our history, and people will come up to me and say, well, Sheriff, don't you agree with background checks? And I said, on criminals I do, on law-abiding citizens I don't. And this is the thing, my dear friends. If you tell the government that they have the authority to force you to go through a background check, then they have the authority to continue that gun control measure. A criminal history background check on you for just exercising your Second Amendment rights is an infringement.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to line up for a background check as soon as it's voluntary. But I will not succumb to any of their stupid laws, and that's just one of them. They want you to think about that. They say, oh, it's a good idea. Well, the Constitution, in my Supreme Court case, Justice Scalia said, the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. And that's where we are today. We're not going to compromise any of the Second Amendment. We're not going to allow any infringements because gun control and infringements are against the law. Once you start giving them authority they do not constitutionally have, where does it stop? That's what's brought us here today. It's to stop today.
How do you prevent another Waco?
We have, and what about those horrible incidents? What about the worst mass killings in American history? They try to blame them on citizens. It's always been government. You can look at Kent State, you can look at Ruby Ridge, you can look at Waco. If the sheriffs, I will tell you this, if the sheriffs had remained in charge of any of those places, the law would have been enforced and no one would have been killed. When I was first studying the Constitution, I did so at a police training class. And the instructor's name was Dr. W. Cleon Skousen. And he taught us as law enforcement officers about the Constitution. And I was converted to the Constitution as a rookie cop way back in 1983. And then when I ran for sheriff, I said, we will enforce the Constitution here. We will abide by the Bill of Rights. You would think that would be a simple thing for those who have sworn to do that they would actually be able to focus and keep their word in expressing their defense of the Bill of Rights, the supreme law of the land. And yet we still have problems with that today, that people don't understand their obligation to keep their word and keep their oath. And so, when Dr. Skousen was teaching me, he handed me his book, and it was called The Making of America. And I traded him a book. 10 years later, I wrote my first book, and I gave him my book. And he told me something that I'll never forget. He said, he challenged me to do this, and he said, promise me that you'll teach these things to your children. Well, I have. I kept my promise, and now I teach them all across America, and we're teaching sheriffs and cops all across America. And I started teaching them to my 9 grandchildren. And the oldest one is barely 6 years old. And her name is Libby, because she was born on the 4th of July. And her name is Liberty. Liberty and on that party. And so I want you to know that what I learned at police training, I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to end my remarks with this. When 240 cops went to the University of Utah in Salt Lake City to learn about our Constitution and our oath of office and the foundation of America and the making of America, and what a miracle this all was, and how we today have an obligation to make sure that miracle never dies. And we are the result of that miracle. And it's because we've adhered to the principles that we will not bend on the principles expressed in the Bill of Rights. And when the Founding Fathers developed the Bill of Rights, they said, these are the untouchables by government. These are the strict rules that government can never cross. They can never change, alter, or legislate anything about these precious freedoms. And that's what they had in mind. And that's why the Second Amendment is so vital to America and to freedom. And they want us to get in this argument as to whether or not there is a statistical analysis that proves that gun ownership is safer and reduces crime. It doesn't matter. Gun control in America is against the law.
Yeah!
I want you to feel from my heart to yours. And so I'm going to close with what Dr. Skousen taught all of us. At police training, I want you to remember while I do this, while I say goodbye to you in sign language, I want you to know that this is from my heart to yours, and I dedicate it to each and every one of you. And I dedicate it to the Founding Fathers. And I dedicate it to my children and yours, and to my grandchildren and yours. And this was a little kindergarten exercise that I learned this at police training. But I think it's so apropos to what we're doing here today. And I call it America's political prayer. It might not be a prayer, but then again, it might be the only one we have left. And again, remember that what I share with you now, I learned at police training. And it goes like this. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure Constitution for the United States of America. And that's the eagle. Long may she be free.
Was I wrong? Isn't that where they belong? Our next speaker is from Texas Gun Talk, and he is an expert in the field of what is an assault rifle. Please welcome Alan LaFrance.
How y'all doing today? Well, I heard a lot of people talk about how, they weren't from Texas and they, got here as soon as they could. Yeah. My family's been here since the dawn of Texas. They fought at the Battle of San Jacinto. They earned their rights once before by picking up their arms against the tyrannical government. Remember the Alamo! I do apologize. I'm probably not the best public speaker on earth, but I'll try to not keep everybody bored. We keep hearing from the media about these so-called assault rifles and how they're such a danger to our society. An assault rifle is a select fire item. It fires fully automatic. It fires from a detachable magazine. It might look like an AR-15, but an AR-15 certainly is not an assault rifle. So, where does the term assault rifle come from? Let's do a little background. It comes from an evil source. It comes from Nazi Germany. When they were developing an intermediate cartridge to be fired inside of a select fire rifle that they thought would change the tide of battle in favor of the Nazis. That weapon would be known as the STG-44, and the STG stands for Sturmgewehr. Sturmgewehr in German, for those who don't speak German, means storm rifle, or Englishly translated means assault rifle. Why did they name it that? They named it that to scare Allied troops, much in the same way that our media hopes that assault rifle will scare the public. They named it that so that they could use fear and intimidation to extract their will and to remove our freedoms and our ability to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government. A lot of times these excuses, I don't think you should have one. That's not a valid excuse. It's not. When has a government ever, gone against their people? I don't know. There's about, 6 million people that are dead in Central Europe because a tyrannical government thought that they were subhumans, that they weren't good enough. They stripped their firearms rights before that. They used gun registration lists to go house to house to find these people because they represented the power of the people to resist Nazi tyrannical rule in Central Europe. They were among the first to go. Registration, they think it's for the will of the people and it's good. It's not. All it's there is a list for people to eventually come along that way and say, these people are dangerous. These people are against us. And everyone wants to feel safe. We can't let that happen. We can't let registration be the next step. The National Firearms Act of 1934 is the first step to registration. The government does not trust you with a machine gun. The government does not trust you with a muffler on your gun. They trust you to have a muffler and actually require you to have a muffler on your motor vehicle. That seems kind of ironic, doesn't it? So, yeah. So, we see this individual tool turned into this vilified item to where if you own a semi-automatic rifle, or if your neighbor owns a semi-automatic rifle, tomorrow they're going to become some killing machine and they're going to run out there and just go crazy. I'm sorry, I see lots of people here that own semi-automatic rifles that aren't going crazy. Are we just we face the same challenges going forward that our original framers had. The British would confiscate firearms that they found that were owned by individuals. They would blow up powder stores. they would go and they would take away cannons. But we didn't let them take them all, did we? We didn't let the Mexican army come and take our cannon at Gonzales. And in fact, that's what gave us our freedom as Texans. We would then take that freedom and join a greater union. But that union turned on itself into the Civil War, where we again were faced against a tyrannical government that sought to control individual states' rights. They hoped to tear away the 10th Amendment. They hoped to tear away constitutional rights for the greater good. I don't care about the greater good. I care about my personal rights and the rights of everyone else to enjoy their lives and protect their own.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what does the other half have to say about these evil weapons that we so-called, assault rifles or assault weapons, whichever they want to call them these days? What do they say about them? And please don't laugh too loud. A folding stock, which facilitates maximum concealability and mobility in close combat, which comes at the expense of the accuracy desired in a hunting weapon.
Baloney.
Where does it say in the Second Amendment that our rights are about hunting? In my opinion, the only thing that we're going to be hunting is a bunch of tyrants. Second item here, this was especially good, it's a favorite of mine. A pistol grip which facilitates spray fire from the hip without losing control. I don't know if any of y'all play video games, but even in video games, that doesn't happen. Maybe in Hollywood, when they have those, magazines that hold, 8,000 rounds or whatever. I need to find one of those Hollywood mags. A pistol grip also facilitates one-handed shooting. Wow. Evidently, nobody at this entire campaign organization that supposedly supports our right to own a pistol or a shotgun has ever shot a gun. Ever. I guess they're too afraid of a hammer or tools or whatever they want to call it. This is a good one, too. A barrel shroud, which enables the shooter to shoot many rounds because it cools the barrel. Somehow, they need to hire like an engineer or something, because obstructing a piece of metal prevents airflow. It doesn't cool the barrel. It prevents overheating, evidently. It also allows the shooter to grasp the barrel area to stabilize the weapon. How many of y'all want to grasp a barrel? You'd only do that once. Actually, I take that back. I've seen some people do it twice. Those people, well, they're just special. Without incurring serious burns during rapid fire. Yeah, okay. And then this is the best. We're gonna vilify pretty much everybody who owns an AR with this one, okay? Just keep in touch. A threaded barrel designed to accommodate a silencer, which is regulated by the National Firearms Act of 1934. It's a felon if you become a felon if you don't have the requisite paperwork for it.
Closer to the mic.
Which allows an assassin, not a shooter, an assassin, to shoot without making noise. Here's a little tip for you. An AR-15, when fired, produces about 160 decibels of noise. That's louder than any rock concert you've ever been to. Even the Grateful Dead wake 30 decibels, not loud. It's louder than these windbags in Washington. We should thread the mouths of politicians so that we can silence them. We need to send that to Advanced Armament so they can get that one made. I have to register the adapters and all that fun stuff.
I'll put up 200.
Ready to get fired up? Yeah! All right, I'm going to give you back to Eric to introduce him. Make sure you give him a good round of applause.
Texas Land Commissioner Jerry Patterson.
Well, I gotta be smarter than the microphone. I've had people say it's hard to hear in the back, and I think if I could get this unhooked here and hold it close to my mouth, maybe we can hear it. There we go. There we can hear it a little better. Anyway, I got a bumper sticker here. It's a message that we all need to know about. It says, Second Amendment, defender of the rest. That's what it's about. Because without the second, all the others are in jeopardy. You remember about 4 years ago, well, that's a little more than that, about 5 years ago, we had a presidential race underway. The Republican nominee was John McCain, a true American hero, and the Democrat nominee was a gentleman named Barack Obama. And you remember Obama was out somewhere on the left coast at some kind of wine and cheese reception, and he made a comment that the people in the flyover part of the country, you know, here in Texas or Pennsylvania or Kentucky, were bitter about their guns and their religion. You remember that? Well, I have to tell you, I'm real proud to be among about 1,500 liberty-loving, gun-owning, God-fearing, Bill of Rights believing, Texas Second Amendment proponents. And I have another thing I noticed. Whenever you go to a gun show, ooh, did I say gun show? Whenever you go to a Second Amendment rally or to an NRA convention, do you notice how friendly and polite everybody is? If you bump into somebody, they go, "Excuse me," and you say, "Oh, no, excuse me," to which they respond, "Excuse me," and when you respond, "Excuse me," you know why that is? We're all packing. Is anything any more polite, any safer, any more constitutional liberty-loving assembly than a group of folks who believe in our enumerated right to keep and bear arms? Yeah. We are here. You know, and I want to make that point because you hear this discussion today. You hear people, the pundits, the political, whatever you want to call them, they'll say, well, you know, that Second Amendment, well, it was, okay, we needed it in 1775, but we don't really need it now. And maybe we should repeal it, amend the Constitution to do away with the second. I have news for them. All rights, no rights. Rights do not come from government. We are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and they are enumerated in the first 10 amendments to our Constitution. If you don't believe me, go back and read the writings and the comments of the founders when there was a big fight going on in the late 1780s or thereabouts. There were those who said, no, let's don't write down these liberties and put it in a Bill of Rights, because if we do that, that implies that government granted them to us. And if we do that, that implies that if it's not listed, we don't own that. We don't possess that. It is not ours. And then the other side says, no, I understand what you're saying, but I want to write it down anyway. And to write it down anyway, guys, and they're the ones that won the day. And so therefore we have the 10 amendments that are inviolate, natural rights that are only enumerated in our Constitution, and they can never be repealed. They can never be amended. You can never change the Constitution to diminish liberty. You can only change it to enhance liberty. And we've done that a few times, as you know. You may not know, some of you do, some of you don't, but in 1993, I was a brand new state senator.
And we survived.
TJ knows me. TJ knows me. I was a brand new state senator, and we carried a bill called the Concealed Handgun Law, which passed, and Governor Richards vetoed the bill in 1993. 1995, we carried it again. I was the author of Senate Bill 60, the Concealed Handgun Law, and Governor Bush signed it into law in 1995. And I know there are those among you who say I shouldn't have to have a license to exercise a constitutional right. I don't disagree, but I have to tell you we didn't lose our liberty overnight, nor shall we regain it overnight, but we're moving in the right direction. But if you remember, 1995, every editorial board across the state of Texas, every newspaper editorial board said that if we pass that law to allow law-abiding citizens to carry a firearm, that it will be, and I quote, Wild, Wild West, shootouts at every four-way stop, blood in the streets, and end of civilization as we know it. None of that happened.
What did I say?
What did happen, though, if you look at the Department of Justice National Institute for Justice data, 1993, the firearms homicide rate was over 7 per 100,000. That was 1993. More than 7 per 100,000. The last year that data is available is 2010, I believe, and it's less than 3. 60% decrease in firearms homicides since 1993. There's a couple of lessons there. One of those lessons is that citizens can be trusted. And anyone who is inclined to commit in Texas murder, which is punishable by lethal injection, is generally not deterred by a prohibition on unlawful carry, which is normally a Class A misdemeanor. It doesn't make any sense. People who don't want to break the law certainly don't want to commit murder. Similar to the debate we had on the floor of the Senate, when one of my colleagues says, Senator, I will vote for your bill if you prohibit concealed handguns from being in the Capitol. I said, no, we're not doing that. If it's good enough for the citizens of Texas, it's certainly good enough for those of us who are blessed to make laws in this Capitol. None of that happened. There is now a new debate. It's the same thing. It's liberty versus tyranny. It's liberty versus more government control. Back then it was the concealed handgun law. Today it's high cap magazine bans. Today it's so-called assault weapons ban. And I'm a retired Marine. I know what an assault weapon is. We're not talking about assault weapons. We're talking about macho-looking weapons, but they're not assault weapons. It's the same thing. The same people who in 1995 said blood in the streets, wild, wild west, shootouts at every four-way stop are the ones that want to take away your liberty. Are the ones like Feinstein, whose assault weapons bill. Feinstein says that we're going to, if we have a certain listed weapon, we're going to have to get fingerprinted. I'm sorry. That's when I just say no. That's when I say come and take it. That's when I say, when you tell me that you're going to fingerprint me for a weapon that I possess, I'm sorry, that will be like Charlton Heston said, out of my cold dead hands. The governor of New York, which now, we worry about these, you don't really need 30-round capacity magazines. Well, you hadn't been hog hunting, you had a feeder. But you see, it's not about 30 rounds, it's about, well, okay, it's 10. Well, New York just passed one that says 7. Pretty soon, if you've got more than 2-round capability, you are an assault weapon carrier. So it's all about incrementalism. There are those who say, well, the tragedy of Sandy Hook, and I have to tell you the weekend after that, 20 years, Are you sure you're right? And I concluded, yeah, I'm sure I'm right. Liberty has a price, you know, and there are going to be folks who abuse the liberty that their maker has given them and that their founders have enumerated. It's not just the Second Amendment. We know that certain folks will take that Second Amendment and use a firearm in a terribly tragic manner. We also, and when somebody challenges me on that, I always use the First Amendment example. The First Amendment kills. Because were it not for 24/7 coverage of the latest miscreant nut job, and his face is on the television, on all broadcast news, and all the cable and network channels, and somewhere out there in America, there's another 19-year-old locked in the basement looking at video games who sees that image and says, I can be somebody. That's the First Amendment. They have a right to do that. The news sources have a right to put that guy's picture and to make him into what he becomes in the mind of another mentally deficient person. So the First Amendment kills. The Second Amendment does as well. The Fifth Amendment allows sometimes a guy who's guilty and ought to be in jail to go free and maybe kill again. Liberty has a price. We have to maintain a balance. We have it today. Let's not lose it. I don't have much else to say. I have to tell you that I had a couple of incidents. I met a gentleman a long time ago, in the late 70s, briefly at Naval Air Station, Miramar, California. I flew fighters in the Marine Corps. And in the mid-70s, there was a Soviet fighter pilot named Viktor Belenko. He defected with the MiG-25, a Foxbat, which at that time was a really super-duper Soviet fighter. He flew into Hokkaido, Japan. He sought and received asylum. He's somewhere in the U.S. today, but in the late 70s, he was doing debriefs. He was briefing and this was at Top Gun. I was an aggressor at Top Gun, off and on, but I went into the debrief that featured Viktor Belenko, and the question somebody asked him was, could the Soviets ever invade this country? And Viktor Belenko said, no, too many cowboys with guns. He was right. Remember that any time a politician tells you that he understands the Second Amendment because he hunts, he's wrong. And remember that all of us today here together are right about our liberty, and we will not back down. God bless Texas. God bless you.
What a great day in the best state and the best nation on God's green earth. Of this beautiful building, and as been alluded to many times, folks, we stand today on the ramparts. It's us, it's you, it's me. Today, on these grounds, these hallowed grounds right here, let us take a pledge, a solemn pledge. As the left tries to manipulate and encroach on our rights, the solemn pledge is, not on my watch.
I want to thank all of you for coming out this afternoon. I want to add a special thank you to my wife and my family. For the last 2.5 weeks, I've pretty much been non-existent.
Thank you for your hard work. Yeah.
I also want to thank my new friend Shannon. Come on up here, Shannon. Without Shannon, this would not have happened. Thank you very much. And also, of course, the Waco Tea Party president and my new friend, Toby Walker. Well, this is it. We may have won the battle, but we haven't won the war. This is not going to end with one rally. We have to keep the momentum going, and we have to continually say that we will not allow our Second Amendment rights to be infringed. And that starts with everybody signing this petition up here. This petition, if you haven't signed it after the rally, I ask everyone that hasn't signed it, please come up here to the front, sign that petition. We're going to deliver that petition directly to Senator Ted Cruz, and it's going straight to